Not long ago, I asked my boyfriend to teach me the basics of 2D fighting games, specifically anime fighters like Melty Blood and Under Night in Birth. Yeah, I know, they have goofy ass names. Anyway, fighting games have never been easy for me. I always seem to forget inputs, I crumble under the pressure of insane combos and a running clock, I'm too aggressive, don't block enough, but the biggest problem I've identified is headspace. Once I've been beaten down so much, I start to become tilted, playing in a haze of frustration, losing the abilities to concentrate and make split-second decisions while stuck there. When I first started practicing Melty Blood, I could barely get past the third stage on normal. In most fighting games, stage 3 and 4 are when I notice the AI starts to step up its aggression, intelligence, and combos. This is when the pressure really starts to mount, and fighting games are nothing but pressure anyway, whether you're under it or inducing it upon the opponent. You need to be aware of every input, every move, every invincibility frame, and if you're playing against a real person, you need to notice patterns in how they fight, something that is harder to do than it sounds. I practice against the CPU for the most part, occasionally getting some rounds in against my boyfriend, who is way more skilled at this genre of game than I am. Over time, I watch myself be able to move through each stage of normal mode with little to no problems. Quite an upgrade to how terrible I was when I started. Again, I could barely get past stage 3 on normal. Now I play on hard and am currently trying to overcome the insane challenges that are presented when playing a game you're, well, just plain bad at, especially while under extreme pressure on every stage. I focused a lot on technique, not button mashing, using what I have to my best advantage, trying my hardest not to forget inputs for the more complex combos and supers. This is the most difficult thing for me, and you'll notice I use pretty basic combos most often. But one thing I have acknowledged, yet tend to ignore, is the mental aspect. I'm a huge fan of the Devil May Cry series. I'm sure most of you know this. In DMC, accounting for attack patterns, invincibility frames, making split-second decisions based on what is happening in the moment, paying attention to the entire battlefield rather than just your immediate foes, these things are required, not to mention precision and the hours it takes to numb your hands. You can see this might sound intimidating, but most of it becomes second nature. Very often my inputs are what you'd call intuitive as opposed to overly deliberate. I know what to do in the moment and the exact timing to get it done. And it took months of practice to get to this point in DMC5, and honestly, I never got to that point in previous DMC games because I didn't put in the time. Sure, I got good enough to get through, but I wasn't focused on mastering everything so much as I just wanted to get the win. With DMC5, I have spent hours upon days upon months practicing inputs, studying enemy attack patterns, doing Bloody Palace over and over in attempts to bring my times and damage taken down. I've spent time doing hand exercises and thinking about the best strategies to get through certain challenges, even looking up videos to see what others have done in certain cases. What I'm saying is becoming good at something takes time. Getting to the point where muscle memory and intuition guide you is a long road, one that isn't easy most often. Dying over and over can be discouraging. Practicing for hours at a time only to see a small payoff in the end can be spirit-crushing. Fighting games offer all of these challenges with the added bonus of intense pressure at every moment. You don't get much time, or any at all, to reassess a situation and change up your strategy. Not only is there a clock winding down, but your opponent is just as desperate to win as you and will employ a number of strategies to take you down. When it comes to DMC, I've rarely hit a low point where I felt beaten into oblivion and up against an impossible wall. In fact, that doesn't happen to me in most games, not even Dark Souls, and bruh, I suck at Souls games. But the one genre it is constant in is fighting games. I've always loved playing Tekken, but I was nothing more than a casual playing to blow off steam here and there. I put in some time to master Jin in his various iterations over the years, but for the most part, I did not dedicate myself to strengthening my ability in Tekken because fighting games always eventually broke me down. I found the experience of them unenjoyable after a while due to feeling like I could never get the inputs down. Melty Blood is the first fighting game I've dedicated myself to getting better at, and, well, it's not going too bad, could be better, but the same issues have arisen over and over again. Forgetting inputs, feeling as though I can never win, getting frustrated at the point of wanting to rage quit, and telling myself trying to get better is useless. All of these problems are mental, not physical. I know I can remember inputs just fine as I can do it when the pressure isn't too heavy, but the moment I get into a sticky situation, suddenly my arsenal drops down to half of what it was because I can't remember inputs. Not only that, but I tend to ignore what I can do in situations, whether it's using my special abilities when possible or even blocking. I suddenly pay too much attention to my life bar and begin to get aggressive, thinking that is the way to a victory, and it hardly ever is. Yesterday, I felt this times a million. I started out like always, single player versus mode on hard, and first few fights went okay. As always, Shiki gave me a hard time, but that's typical. He's just a bad matchup for me. The next couple of stages went okay, with some slip-ups here and there, but it was when I got to the second to last stage, CL, that things got real bad. Again, it started out okay, but whenever I'd come close to pulling out a final win, she'd come back with a vengeance, KOing me over and 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 over. For the sake of time, I've cut out a lot, but believe me, getting wrecked by her went on for a good 20 minutes. I was annihilated again and again, and I'm halfway convinced that the only reason I eventually beat her is a combination of numbers and luck. Like, statistically speaking, I was bound to win if I kept trying. Each loss slowly pecked away at my spirit, to the point that when I finally won, I didn't even enjoy it. Unlike Dark Souls, where overcoming a challenge after such a long battle feels amazing, this felt annoying. I knew the next fight was going to be worse. Additionally, all I could think about was how many times I had to fight CL before I won. I felt I could never get the skills necessary to become good at this game. My spirit had been broken, and my mental state was fragile. All it took was a couple of beatdowns and special moves out of Arcuid to fuck me up. And another bloodbath began. In the end, I couldn't even beat her. I'd had my spirit broken so much by these two fights that I had to ask Josh to beat her for me, and my spirit completely disintegrated when I watched him beat this bitch in one try. Sure, he had a bit of a hard time, but it didn't matter. He got the win. He gave me a few pointers: be less aggressive, utilize opportunities to punish better, jump at Arcuid, and bait an attack before blocking and countering. Genuinely good advice that I took and incorporated into my practice. For the next couple of hours, I sat here labbing and playing single-player mode over and over, attempting to learn new combos and retain the ones I already knew. The problem was that I was not in the right headspace, and each failure made things worse. Trying a simple input and not pulling it off made me start calling myself worthless and other silly shit. I was deep in it. I knew I needed to take a break, so I went and worked on my short story. I read a few chapters of Berserk, took a few deep breaths, and worked on a video. My mind cleared up, so I decided to head back to practicing, this time with much better results. I took the advice Josh had given me seriously, and attempted to incorporate more defense into my strategy, and I saw progress pretty quickly. I told myself that I needed to take what I knew and use it to the best of my abilities, identifying the best situation for each combo or move. Today, I decided to test what I did, and I wanted to see if hours of practice and focusing on keeping my head clear would make a difference. Things started out rough, with this bitch Mash kind of handing my ass to me at first, throwing out special moves for no reason, just getting on my damn nerves. But instead of letting this get to me, I refocused on my inputs and defense. I stopped letting other thoughts intrude, and I told myself to pay attention only to the now. And it worked. This thought process paid off over and over. Every time I found myself getting discouraged or forgetting inputs, I'd brush it off and focus on the moment, on what I had right in front of me, and what it would take to get the win. Then I faced CL, and I was pretty intimidated. I went into this battle worried, feeling like I was going to forget everything I learned and get wiped. However, that didn't happen. Instead of being wrecked beyond belief, I ended up 2-1-ing her on the first try. No joke. I played way more cautiously, blocking and watching her moves when necessary. I usually had the right answer to her attacks, with a few exceptions here and there. Then Arcuid, and the same thing happened. I didn't beat her twice in a row, and as it usually does, it came down to a final battle. The pressure had mounted, and somehow, with very little life left, I pulled out a win, pretty amazingly, and again, probably a lot of luck. The difference between what I did today and yesterday is simple: mental headspace. The advice Josh gave me helped a lot, but as evidenced by the practicing I had yesterday, it wasn't enough. I needed to fix an internal problem, a mental one, in order to overcome this challenge. Now, I'm still pretty bad at fighting games. Sure, I had a good run today, but I still have a lot to learn. Will I ever be good at them? Probably not, but seeing how quickly I turn things around gives me some hope. What I learned from this experience is a bit interesting, something that's obvious that I never thought too much about in regards to games or even life. I turn my weaknesses into strengths. Forgetting inputs? Fine, then I'll use the ones that I do know in a way that boosts my gains. Having trouble remembering special moves? Then hang back and play defensively until you're given an opportunity to punish. What's hilarious is I'm a writer. Using my traumas and weaknesses to create stories is what I do. Taking negative things and transforming them into a positive? That's my entire job. There wasn't really a point to this video. I just decided to make it on the fly because I found the stark difference in skills showcased simply due to a head change to be pretty dang cool, and I wanted to share it. As always, I think that video games are extremely valuable in teaching human beings things about the world around them. And, like, video games can and will change very many people for the better. I know people look at like COD and all the violence in video games and they think that's making things worse, but I don't think so. I think that deeply moving and philosophical games are the direction that these things are heading in. Movies are already trash. And, a lot of AAA video games, also trash. But indie games and JRPGs and honestly Western RPGs too, and stories that give a fuck about the integrity of the characters and give a fuck about your feelings and what you take from it, those are becoming more popular, especially in video game medium. So basically what I'm saying is that I had fun playing this fighting game, but once again, it's an example of a game teaching me something important about life. Isn't that funny?
そいつは結構俺も楽しませてもらった。まあ結果は散々だったけどな。